She smiled darkly and shook her head. I'm not crazy. I'm not. Of course, what else would a crazy person claim? That's the Kafkaesque genius of it all. If you're not crazy, but people have told the world you are, then all your protests to the contrary just underscore their point. Do you see what I'm saying? Dennis Lehane, Shutter Island. Welcome back to the Well House Exorcism. This is your ghost of a host of the most, Shanna.
It's Puckwa PJ.
I love that that's your name now. It just makes me so happy. How are you?
I'm good.
Just good, not great?
I mean, school started back up, so I'm just good.
Yeah, do you want to talk about it?
No.
Okay. When I forget that it ever happened. Well, we are here tonight to discuss asylums once again. Because I feel like us going back to school, we're already in an asylum. That's something I want to talk about. I'm broken. I'm kidding. I actually love my job. Anyway, we are here tonight to discuss the Dixmont State Hospital because I figured, why not? We've hit up the Trans-Allegheny. We've hit up Harrisburg. We've hit up Penshurst. Might as well do this one justice too.
Let's do it.
All right. Do you want to say anything else before we begin?
Congratulations to Luke for winning the giveaway.
I'm a little upset that it was not a Well House Exorcism listener, but whatever.
So we're going to be shipping that out to him as soon as we can get to the post office and they're open.
I know, right? When
oh my gosh.
Actually home. Yeah, congratulations. It was lots of fun to watch the spinning wheel, although PJ pushed the button, so I didn't get to push the button and watch it spin.
Yeah.
I'm offended. Anyway, moving on. So really happy, and we are pushed way past the 10K mark. Like, we're rocking it. Getting a little stressed. I'm like, oh, people are listening. I should probably try. Kidding. I do try. So we are looking at almost our 1-year anniversary too in a month.
It's coming up.
Isn't that crazy? Oh, feels weird. This time last year, we were recording the Well House Exorcism episodes like proper. Because we posted them in October.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. I was thinking, like, wow, that's only a year ago. And look how far we've come. Our technology
Feels
is
like
better.
we've been doing it a lot longer than a year.
It's been 84 years. Anywho, let's do this. So,
Was Rose from Southern Alabama?
She could have been.
It's been 84 years.
That's how I always read it. I don't care. Whenever I see the meme, I'm like, yeah, it sounds about right. That's how it feels like when I teach. I pulled a gray hair out, by the way. I was in the bathroom at the school the other day, washed my hands, and look up, I'm like, what is that? What is that? What is that? It's light and it's sparkling. And I realized I had a gray hair sticking up right in the middle of my head. So, and it's like maybe an inch long. So I grabbed it with both of my hands, like both different fingers, like in the front. I'm like, rip it. I popped it out. Totally gray hair, grown out of nowhere. It's gone.
You're talking to the person who's like half his hair is gray.
I know. But I had a gray hair and it was really upsetting. That's the horror of this episode right now. This is what happens when I do a podcast.
Go on, talk about how gray hairs are terrible. This is the real horror of the show tonight.
Jackie, if you're listening, I'm sorry. Tim, I know you're listening too. I'm sorry, but I have a gray hair and it hurts. I'm going to do what Penny does. I'm just going to dye my hair purple. Be done. All right. Anyway, my references for this evening include Times Online, DixmontStateHospital.com, which kind of like Harrisburg State. Those who control the past control the present kind of stuff here.
Yeah.
Man, is their conversation a little whitewashed. Hauntedplaces.org and hmdb.org. Oh, and Wikipedia, because why not?
My non-sources for this evening.
Oh, and Reddit.
And we'll get into why they're non-sources later.
Is this the AI?
Yeah, so I used AI to research, and that didn't end well. Thank goodness I actually cited my sources and looked them up after. I asked the AI for sources for its search results. Trib Live and is one of them.
Trib Live, okay.
Yep, and The Times and a Facebook article.
Oh yeah, Facebook.
From Harrisburg, Pittsburgh, LLC.
Harrisburg and Pittsburgh are not very close.
No.
Okay.
No, hold on. I can't read. Haunted Pittsburgh LLC. I don't know where that came from, but...
It is very late. And we are tired. It has been a weekend. And you're teaching, and yeah, we got it. All right. So let's do the opening of Dixmont State Hospital, shall we? Give a little background to our listeners. Opening in 1862. Sounds pretty good, right?
It's one heck of an opening.
I know. Opening in 1862, the Dixmont State Hospital was once called the, and this is a mouthful, Department of the Insane in the Western Pennsylvania Hospital of Pittsburgh. What a horrible mouthful.
Well, I mean, there's lots of specificity, so you know what it is.
Like, how do you make that smaller? DOTIITWPHOP. Bluey. Anyway, unlike many of the places we discuss in this podcast, this location was closed in 1984 and almost completely demolished in 2006. So when we discuss the hauntedness, we have to go back to the 80s to about 2005. But there are some things today.
That was a long time ago.
I know, we were in college in 2006. So the reasons for the demolition were to build new structures for shopping and also because of vandalism and even fires. Those pyromaniacs. However, the area is believed to be haunted by many spirits. Oogie boogie boogie. As it adds to our discussion of state hospitals and questionable mental health care, I thought it would be a good topic for this evening as we kind of shift away from Eastern State Penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
It's my thought. So as we already know, psychiatric institutions have long been put in a negative light due to the actions of those untrained and underprepared. I learned from Jackie, definitely not trained, because
No.
1960s for nurses. I mean, it's crazy. We have already discussed at length the tortures of Pennhurst, and we'd read between the lines for Harrisburg State Hospital because,
Yeah.
that website.
Yep.
And we also did a deep dive with Tim for the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. So we have a pretty good background. With all those locations, the story, though, has been the same time and time again. They were created with noble intentions, but destroyed by capitalism, unfortunately. So this hospital, of course, is no different. Its name was created, actually, from Dorothea Dix. Yes, because she was the founder of mental health reform, pretty much. So she actually came to Pittsburgh and stayed at the hospital for months to ensure it was following the best methods for its patients. So this is if you want to toss in your AI-generated haunts.
So my
Your
first
spoopy spoop.
my first non-source
It's not true at all.
said that there have been people who have spotted Dorothea Dix wandering the halls and sitting in a rocking chair.
Wow.
That she supposedly enjoyed on the premises. And so they would just see her like rocking in the rocking chair. When I dug deeper, there were no sources that ever said anything about her or a rocking chair. If you look up Dixmont State Hospital plus rocking chair, like in quotes, no, there were zero results.
So once
There's
again,
nothing out there.
if anyone is listening who is a student out there, do not use AI for anything.
No. Or the way we've been teaching it in our English classes, use it to get some ideas.
Oh yeah, it's great for creative writing.
And then dig deeper.
Yep.
Because you can't trust it.
Not at all.
AI is very confident in being wrong.
It has no problem with being wrong because it's a computer. So anyway, so Dorothea Dix has not been spotted. And none of my research did I find that. So I was like, oh, that's really cool. And then I'm like, oh, never mind. I can see why I didn't find it. All
Can I just give my other
Sure,
my
give us
non-sources
both,
right now? So Trib Live, they have this article here, and it is called Thrill Seekers Hunt Ghosts in Dixmont State Hospital. Sounds like a great article.
It does,
Some
yeah.
really juicy content's going to be in here.
Tell me it's like one line.
No, it's maybe 2 pages if you were to print it out.
Wowzers, okay.
It's all about someone who went to visit the hospital, and it's just covered in graffiti and soda cans and stuff like that. There's no mention of, like, ghosts in here at all. The whole thing is just, like, very descriptive, paints a picture of what it looks like in there.
Pentagrams?
No. Graffiti that reads, Walmart sucks.
Well, that's because Walmart was buying. Okay, all right.
There's a little bit of history on the hospital. Yeah, that.
Thanks, Trib.
So, I mean, I don't know why they named the title that. And the other one from the Times.
One of us came very prepared tonight.
It's not loading.
There is no
But it was the same
time.
kind of thing. It was all the history of it, even though the article was about, like, spooky stuff. And the intro is like, with Halloween nearing, coming around the corner, we thought we'd talk about, all the spooky things in our area. And then it's just the history and, like, none of the spooky, well, like, real spooky things, the horrors of it, but no actual, like, ghostly
That's
stuff.
upsetting.
Yeah.
Even I found ghosts. So anyway, where is this place located? Well, as we mentioned,
Western
Pittsburgh.
PA.
Yes,
Pittsburgh.
Where my university is, University of Pittsburgh. Maybe we'll move out there one day, you and me, for my university ship.
And 3 children.
We'll leave them here. Anyway, so we're talking Western PA, as you said. It was actually located on a wooded bluff that overlooked the Ohio River. Very picturesque. And apparently of all the state hospitals that we have in the state, this one was the most picturesque. So there you go. It was a gorgeous spot, and like Harrisburg State Hospital, it was meant to be self-sufficient. The plan for it actually began in the late 1850s because Pittsburgh was in need of a larger institution for mentally ill patients. Do you know why?
Because they're getting overrun in other places? Overflowing?
Yes. The Western
the tale is old as time when it comes to mental health.
Yep. The Western PA Hospital did, in fact, have a psychiatric department, all right? But it was not large enough to hold all the patients who required care. I remember reading about that. Yeah. Yep. Like most mental hospitals, it was overcrowded and did not have enough workers. And they only had 26 beds dedicated to mental health issues.
Yikes.
Yeah. And they realized they had way more mentally ill people and in almshouses and in jails at that point than they could adequately provide for and support with just 26 beds.
Yep.
And no workers. Yeah. Imagine like you're going to almshouses and jails to find mentally ill people. Like they shouldn't even be there, as we discussed. Like there should be, yeah. So this is where Dorothea Dix enters the picture. As she had built that statute of reform, she was invited to Pittsburgh to be a part of a steering committee that was tasked with creating the institution. As part of the committee, as part of it, she was very specific with her desires for the hospital. And pretty much all of them were followed through because she knew what she was talking about. She suggested they followed the Kirkbride plan, which we previously discussed on the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and Tim rocked that. So, listeners, if you have not listened to Trans-Allegheny, stop now and go back to that one, because in that we do kind of discuss Dorothea Dix, but Tim goes really detailed on the Kirkbride plan. But just like in a general sense, it kind of calls for this like very lofty, grandiose style, very Victorian. It's meant to have lots of space. It was meant to have greenery. It was supposed to kind of enhance this like kind of nurturing environment to aid in your rehabilitation and your healing. They chose to begin building on over 400 acres of land. It was right near the Ohio River I mentioned. It's now what they call Killbuck. The names we have in Pennsylvania for our towns.
I know.
And Killbuck only has one L. That really bothers me. But anyway, if you're going to kill the buck, I'm kidding. It's probably from someone's last name. But anyway, the hospital was designed by the architect John W. Kerr. Of course, again, he followed the Kirkbride plan. It began in 1859, and it was ready to open 3 years later, 1862. That's crazy to me. It was that fast. And we're talking, that was happening during the Civil War. Like, to put in context, right?
Yeah.
Like, whereas other places had to stop because they couldn't get their materials, this place got built. It done did what it was supposed to do. Originally, only 113 patients were transferred from Western PA. Again, they had 26 beds, and they're transferring 113 patients. That math hurts my head a little bit. But again, they're sending 113. That kind of, again, just showcases how ill-prepared the entire world was for mental health issues, especially in light of wars, right? Because we do have the Civil War happening. People are already coming back with PTSD, for crying out loud. So anyway, by the end of the 1800s, there were between anywhere 1,200 to 1,500 patients. They're not sure. And the fact that the number is actually unknown has me a little concerned. But I mean, like I forget where I read it, but I think they were prepared to have like 200-ish patients. I think that's what it said originally. But they're pushing 1,500 patients. And it, of course, the number gets even higher. We've heard this time and time again.
Yeah.
But like that was in less than 40 years.
Yeah.
You know, if it starts in 62, that just... Anyway, in 1907, the hospital officially became Dixmont Hospital for the Insane. Less of a mouthful.
For sure.
Thank you for commenting. The reason for this was they were separated from the Western PA hospital system. They wanted to cross it off and be themselves. But in 1921, they changed name again to just Dixmont Hospital. They removed the word insane because there's a stigma around the word.
Yeah.
It doesn't change how you're treating your patients, but does look better, I guess.
It's better to the outside world. And
I don't understand. They kept changing the names. But anyway, they were able to separate because the building was built with the Kirkbride plan. It was completely self-sufficient. So that's why they're like, we're done.
Yeah.
So again, 400 acres, very similar to Harrisburg State and Trans-Allegheny. They had their own farmlands. So they had their own livestock. They had their own railway station. They had a post office. They had a water treatment plant, a sewage treatment plant, which still exists today, and even electricity facilities. There was a recreation center, greenhouses, picnic pavilions, trails even through the woods to go for nice little walks, and a cemetery, which is important for later.
Okay.
Just saying. Now, added to this, the farmlands, they had their own butchers and farmers, and even bakers.
And candlestick makers?
No, why? They should have.
I know.
Why didn't
they missed out on an opportunity.
According to some sources, they even had
just one more thing they dropped the ball on.
They should have focused on that instead of changed their name 5 million times. Anyway, according to some sources, they had electricians, they had laborers, pipe fitters, botanists, chefs, and a barber and a dentist. Like, that is crazy. Again, very similar to Trans-Allegheny and to Harrisburg State. The reason was to create this kind of world within a world. You have our own little microcosm. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to bother us as a home for our patients because they knew that many would never leave.
Yep.
So they knew this was going to be a home for patients. Many would never leave. Even through the 1970s, we still had people living there because they had nowhere else to go. Mm-hmm. But when you leave so many beds, that's a problem.
Yeah.
If you're not planning on having them go back into society, you only take so many on before you're overrun. So the solution to the problem, what do you think the solution was, PJ?
Just keep bringing more people in?
More beds, yeah. Put them in the hallways.
We'll find space.
Exactly, yeah. So more beds and less funds. That is the solution, of course. So just like every other asylum we've discussed, less money and more burdens means a lack of quality care and overcrowding. While the end of the 1800s saw a number of about 1,500, by the 1920s, the number had become 1,700.
Lovely. It's great.
At that point, Dixmont did refuse to take any more patients. There actually was an article put in a paper, I believe, that said, like, do not send anybody. If you bring them here, we'll put them right back on the train. Like, we're done. No more people. Like, they were pretty straightforward. Yeah. But anyway, at that point, the soldiers were mostly soldiers returning from World War I suffering PTSD. So they were really kind of catering to a demographic. To maximize amount of space, they put beds in hallways and attics. But when all the locations were completely filled, they had to stop taking admissions, which stinks because there are people out there who obviously needed help, and now they're on the streets. They were a private hospital, and therefore they can only do so much. And they prided themselves on having quality care and training. And so that was the unique feature of this hospital. It was one of the best for mental health at the time period. They wanted to have kind, caring staff. Now, I say that because that's what the website said. The Dixmont Hospital website said. And it's true. They actually did get accreditation. But when you find out what they were doing and the history of what they were doing, it was horrifying.
Yeah.
But it was appropriate for this time period.
Exactly.
So again, we see that patient abuse, what we expect. So I'm putting the word new in air quotes. The new and modern, also in air quotes, patient care, i.e. abuse, happened when the PA Department of Welfare took over the hospital in 1946. So we're talking, we've just finished World War II.
Yeah.
Up to that point, the 20 years prior had been filled with monetary issues. They've been trying to skate by, but we have the 20s, and then we had the Great Depression. So they just couldn't afford the care of 1,700 patients. Of course, interesting, I found this out, while the quality of care, of course, fell, it wasn't as terrible as Penhurst, but salaries were neglected as well. People chose to work there during the Great Depression only to have room and board given to them in exchange for their services. That's how much they cared about their jobs. So I find that fascinating. Like, I guess there's no jobs anyway, so at least you have food, you have a home to live in. I get it.
Yeah.
But you're also offering to do quality care for a patient. Well, the best you can do with $0. So I will give them that shout out. So anyway, after that point, they were forced to sell to the welfare department in order to obtain the funds to rebuild their obsolete buildings, because everything was just like falling to, it's been almost 100 years. It's all fallen to disrepair.
Yeah.
So with the change of administration, of course, comes the refusal of the Kirkbride plan, open air and giving them this holistic, modern beliefs of biology became the center of curing mental illness. And what does that mean, PJ?
Lobotomies.
That's right. Lobotomies. And what else? If it's biological, what do you think?
Experimentation.
We'll go with ECT, but yes.
ECT, our good old friend.
Yeah, our good old friend. Anyway, so yes, all those mental illness cures, I'll put that in air quotes too, were brought forward. Did include the new medicines, so we're talking thorazine, of course, and surgical procedures. That they both required a new building to be built and other new structures. So this includes the Hutchinson building, which is important for later.
Okay.
Yeah, I keep saying it's important for later. While it is known for the unsavory parts of modern medicine for mental illness, the building also contained much of the truly modern medical equipment that we would need. So we had things like the intensive care unit, x-ray facilities, isolation units, observation rooms, instrument sterilization equipment, and physical therapy areas. So It was a medical building. And if you read the description of how it was built, it kind of reminded me a little bit of ESP. There was a nurse's station like in the middle, almost like that wheel kind of
the wheel
idea.
and spoke.
And so every patient room had glass windows so they could see into each patient's room, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's clever.
Yeah. So I'm not sure if they went and visited ESP and got the idea or if it just became more of a modern convenience.
Yeah.
But so it was a very nicely built building. However, what is the most remembered part of this would be the morgue, the laboratory, and the autopsy unit. So yes, the Hutchinson building is the one that we discuss when we discuss hauntings. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So antipsychotic medicines like thorazine were administered with the hopes of calming patients and then send them back into the world. Of course, in the Hutchinson building, lobotomies were performed and electroconvulsive therapies were executed in the hopes of, quote, curing the patients. As we know, using thorazine turned them basically into zombies because they were unable to even do basic functions to care for themselves.
Yep.
Lobotomies and ECT were given on Mondays and Thursdays like clockwork. Reminds me of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. But anyway, it had limited success. And they were kind of late to the game for that because by the 60s, they were completely abandoned for only the use of medication. So thankfully, lobotomies and ECT were not used very long, but again, it was used. Now, that being said, the use of medication provoked the idea that we could deinstitutionalize the hospital, so which means putting people back out in the streets because they were cured. That's not how that works. But by the 70s, the only patients left were those deemed really too old to go back into society. And because of this, a geriatric building was constructed for them and had a recreation center, and they actually invited people in during the week and whatever. So, by 72, Dixmont knew it was going to close its doors. Because again, we've had financial troubles for about 50 years now.
Yeah.
But the locals didn't like the idea of it shutting down because it was offering to them a really important asset to their community. They knew their Western PA hospital couldn't handle that many patients, even if they were mostly geriatric at this time. So they wanted these services to continue in some way. So lots of things were done to try to keep the doors open for the next decade. And so you actually see I give the superintendent credit. So while he is with a shortage of funds, he still finds a way to get accreditation. So they get accreditation from the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals. And fun fact, Dixon was the first and only state hospital in Western PA to get that.
Oh, wow.
So it shows that it was a pretty good hospital. The superintendent also got the Reed Hall of Dixmont on the National Register of Historic Places in 1981, which makes it very difficult to, knock down and destroy.
Mhm.
So he's like, whatever it'll take to keep this place open so we have jobs and we have a nice place for these people to live. Now, even with all these last-ditch attempts to save the site, it eventually was abandoned. It was but then, of course, when you abandon it, because it closed its doors in 1984, you have vandalism, pyromania, satanic activity. That's why I asked about the pentagrams earlier.
Yeah.
Now, drug users and the homeless alike were squatting in the buildings, like taking over full sections, full floors. It's mine, you can't have it kind of stuff. And so locals were complaining about that. Now, they did get full-time 24/7 building security monitors, but that did not deter this vandalist activity and squatters. In 1995, there was a large case of arson because somebody got in there and said, hey, I can light this place on fire.
Of course.
And they did.
So,
once they did that, no surprise, people started going in there as scavengers because they realized that the windows were very expensive because they were kind of like the ones that I have at my school where it's like the double pane glass and the, what are those called? Like the blinds are in between. Yeah. So it makes it impossible for patients to get out. And then, but they're expensive. Yeah. So people were moving full windows to go scrap and sell. They're getting all the copper, all that kind of stuff. So scrappers came in and they were just stealing anything they could to sell for profit.
Yeah.
So eventually it was sold to Walmart.
Yeah. I read about this.
That's why I'm not surprised someone like spray painted like, Walmart sucks. Because Walmart's like, oh, we can build a plaza there. And like, we'll have like, an Applebee's or whatever. It'll be a whole strip mall kind of thing. But the ground there is just awful. So there was a landslide that disturbed the area for weeks. I mean, like it shut down roads. That was that bad of a landslide. Like it just destroyed the local economy.
Yep.
So after that, Walmart's like, you know what? Maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah. So nothing is there now.
Yeah. So they said, we'll let the ground recover. It'll go back to nature. Their plan is to plant 7,000 trees eventually. Which means it'll never happen.
Yep.
Like it's Walmart. So all that is left of the once grand Dixmont State Hospital is a sewage treatment plant because the town said we might be able to use that someday. So that's still there. And that's located next to Tom's Run. And then the Camerata building, which was the geriatric center, that's still there. Left too is the cemetery. And that actually has a marker because there are many unmarked graves. So when you look at the Dixmont State Hospital Cemetery, there's actually a marker and it has a really nice inscription. And I'm quoting this. It says, this cemetery contains the graves of over 1,300 patients buried from May 26, 1863 to March 8, 1937, some of whom were veterans of the Civil War, World War I, and World War II. The hospital was closed in 1984 and demolished in 2006. This marker is dedicated to the men and women laid here to rest. Which I, again, applaud them because unmarked graves.
Yeah.
I want to know how they know it's 1,300 patients. Could it be more? Because again, like if they have...
It's true.
1,700. And the marker says people who fought in World War II, but the marker says buried from the 1863 to 1937.
Yeah.
World War II for us didn't begin to 1941. Yeah. Right? Because, so I'm like, listen.
Interesting. Yeah. Numbers don't quite add up there.
Listen, I'm almost a doctor. I can read. So I don't know, it's interesting. I bet there's more people. There has to be like mass graves, especially like the torture that I'm going to go over in a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, at least they gave a marker. They did that right in my again. Like I gotta say, overall, I do like that they try to keep it open. They were trying to give quality care to these people. No huge issue like Penhurst didn't have that going on.
Yeah.
But in any case, they did leave a marker. So while most of the original location is now razed to the ground, I do want to discuss the hauntings that did exist and currently some that still do.
Okay.
Because of all those treatments. Now, mine did not come from an AI. Just want to say.
The only one I was able to find, I found two.
Okay.
One, the most famous one was a man who guarded the morgue.
Yep.
And two, our buddy Zach Baggins.
No, get him out of here. Oh.
He visited the hospital before it was demolished. So we can watch that episode if you want.
What's his show called? Scariest Places on Earth, right?
No.
No?
Ghost Adventures.
Ugh. Anyway. Okay. Anyway.
Do you want to watch it?
Can I talk like this? The whole time.
We just make fun of him the whole time.
We'll just like, eat popcorn every time he says something stupid.
No, we'd be like...
We'd be gluttons. We'd be vomiting up.
We'd be dehydrated from all the salt.
But it'd be worth it. I love salty, buttery popcorn. All right. So I already know that the treatment for mental illness was brutal.
Mm-hmm.
Now, new evidence has come to light because, again, that website, the Dixmont State Hospital.org, paints a pretty-ish picture. They admit to lobotomies because they have
everyone was doing it.
But I found a lot of information that was not on their website. So there was evidence that hydrotherapy treatment was being used in at least the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
No evidence for later, but definitely the 1800s. This was not mentioned again on the website, like I said, and not even on Wikipedia. So they must be in charge of
they probably monitor it, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of the stuff from the Dixmont website to the Wikipedia page is very much like copy and paste. However, it is true, there was hydrotherapy. The patients were submerged in either hot or cold water for hours, and there was even evidence that some patients were submerged with ice caps attached to their heads.
Wow.
That's a new one.
Yeah?
So my question is, why? But I don't want to know why. Is this brain freeze?
From the outside.
From the outside. Oh, but something else interesting. Bandages were wrapped around their faces to block their ability to see and hear. That's a new torture, too, that I haven't heard, That idea, like being very much alone. And just like Eastern State, patients were sprayed with high-pressure water hoses.
I don't understand, why this would be a thing.
It's helpful. No, it's not helpful. So
Let's make you black and blue all over from the pressure of this water. It will make you feel better.
Some way it'll
somehow
calm you down. Anyway, now again, I mentioned a lot of websites mention lobotomies and ECT because those are the big winners, and everyone wants to hear about lobotomies and ECT. But they also used insulin shock therapy, like Harrisburg State. Now that was to put them into hypoglycemic comas, not healthy.
No,
we already discussed on Harrisburg State. But anyway, before the buildings were raised, it was noted that there were apparitions that were seen, and people could see them peering out of the windows, toward the road. So you could be driving by and you could see them pretty much.
Oh, don't like that.
No, they were watching you. They'd also see them walking around on the grounds, they're out enjoying their Kirkbride
outside,
plan. Yeah, and again, completely empty and abandoned, and there was no one there yet. So that was already being mentioned. While the hospital was known to be haunted by many entities, the most notable one he mentioned was that male spirit, and he is said he was guarding the morgue in the Hutchinson building. So that's where lobotomies were performed, as we already mentioned. Now, it says the spirit scared away those trying to enter the morgue, which I wonder then who the spirit is. Are we trying to hide the fact that lobotomies happened or what? I don't know. Anyway, but so I mentioned the landslide, Walmart has landslide happen, right? When that happened, the people truly believed that it was because of the ghosts. Okay, so I can't make that up. So the lands were a paranormal hotspot. They always believe that. Now they say it's probably because of the satanic activity that happened, the abandoned buildings, of course, human suffering that happened. The location was used in the Scariest Places on Earth episode, and they heard disembodied voices. They even heard EVPs, even with the buildings no longer there. Okay, yeah, so that's kind of cool. The EVPs have been recorded. You hear voices saying the words pain and dead. One Redditor actually mentioned that his sister went there and she had the issue with flashlights turning off even with new batteries, like Carrie had mentioned at ESP.
Power drains.
Yep. Another commenter said that he saw ghosts and what he thought was a demonic entity. But they truly believe the land is cursed. This Redditor did too. And nothing will be able to be built there because there's just too much negativity. But back to the fun fact of the locals. They really believed, and they still believe, there are people out there who still believe this, the landslide happened due to the anger of the tortured souls of what happened there.
Interesting.
Okay. because, and in their mind, it's because the patients are angry that people were trying to destroy their home. Because while we don't agree with mental health care that happened, we discussed in Pennhurst, this was their home. This is the place they liked being, the place they knew. People chose to stay there in the geriatric unit, right? That isn't true, though. Because when they were actually trying to build buildings there and like add on, they had landslides all the time. Because the land is just not safe. It was not conducive. It's on top of a hill.
It's on a hill.
It's not safe. And there's just, uneven land, there's underwater springs and that kind of stuff. So it's just not the best land to grow on and to build on. But it does make for a fun story. If the ghosts got so angry they caused the landslide. Wookie boogie boogie boogie. But I would love to. There's obviously the cemetery is still there. It's overgrown from what I understand. The marker is visible. People have said they feel like kind of like an oogie boogie kind of feeling when they're out there. It feels like a heavy presence, like they're being watched when they're out there. Yeah. Which makes sense because you have all those unmarked graves. And again, there are some buildings that are still open. Some buildings up until just a couple years ago were being used as a Montessori school. So there are some places that are still there, but most of it has been razed to the ground. But I feel like even if it's, raised to the ground, there's still that, like that one Redditor mentioned, like there's that negative energy. You could probably still see things walking around.
Probably. A lot of the Redditors I found, they were all just like, definitely believe it's haunted. That place freaked me out. And they wouldn't go into specifics, but just like, yeah, that place was messed up, and
I like Redditors. They're very honest.
Yeah. I wish that they would have gone into more detail about it.
Well, if there's one website, they actually show pictures of the morgue and everything. Man, those pictures were creepy.
There's a video I want to watch, too, on YouTube about the whole place.
No, but you can find pictures from one person who was allowed to go in there before it was all, shut down. And the pictures, the morgue was still, like, looking pretty decent. Like, the trays you put the human bodies, the slabs, and they go on the little wall, they close it up. Yeah. The refrigerator, I guess you want to call it. Like, they were still in good repair when this person, and you could tell it had been abandoned for years, but it still was in good repair, and you could still pull the trays out. So, like, man, I wouldn't want to be in there. Especially if there's a male spirit angry if you go in the morgue.
Oh my gosh.
Like
that would be fun.
It has to be like ESP, that feeling when you walk around, like there's just that heaviness, that like, somber, sad feeling. Yeah. But people say when you go out to the grave marker and go look at the unmarked graves, because there are like little markers here and there throughout this graveyard on the cemetery. They said like they felt like they were being watched, and it just felt really heavy the whole time. That was the most common comment. And so one guy's like, I kind of want to go out and I want to like, mow out some of the grass and like kind of make the places visible, maybe give them some rest. But he's like, I also don't want to because they're watching. I don't know. So I thought this was like kind of a fun mini episode to put in after ESP and before we go into the 12-hour bunkers with Tim, because I feel like it's important to talk about, these asylums as we move forward, because I feel like we're going backwards a lot of ways in mental health.
Oh, yeah. Ever since, like, COVID really shined a lot of light on the lackluster healthcare that we have and everything that we need to, keep doing to grow as a society to improve that. Yeah.
And, just this morning we were at our church and we had that Sunday school, meeting with the priest, and he was talking about how he wants us to have like, monthly meetings with parents and talk about all the hard questions, because kids are going to college and they're stressed, they're on anxiety medication, and you're not sure why that is. And all I could think was, do you know what kids are going through? We back in this time period, 100 years ago, we were putting them in mental health facilities because they were suffering from PTSD. You can't tell me these kids aren't suffering from something like that nowadays, because just walking into school, they're afraid they're going to get shot. There's a different world than 100 years ago. You didn't have that fear when you went to a one-room schoolhouse, or even 60 years ago. My mom never had that worry ever. Of course, they probably carried, knives back in her school, but because you could have pocket knives back then.
Oh, and our parents went to high school too. They just leave for lunch and things like that. It was much more open.
But I just feel like it's a different world. And, we just listened to the new Fall Out Boy
we didn't start the
cover.
Fire.
Yeah, we didn't start the fire. So the new cover, like, it kind of shows 89 on. So, like, our generation. And it's crazy to think of all things that we have lived through. Like, they mentioned Columbine, for example. And
it's like Gen X and up is what they cover.
So, like, 1989, like, that's obviously millennial, too. Because millennial goes,
Well, that's why I said
yeah,
up, you know.
Yeah, and Gen X. Because your sister's Gen X, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we just missed
we're
Gen
on
X.
we're on the cusp, yeah. But it's interesting to think of all things that we lived through. And we listen to, even the original We Didn't Start the Fire, the stuff that they lived through in their lifetimes, So it's just like, I think every generation has a different problem, and I think for us it's the mental health issue again,
Mm-hmm.
So we've kind of cycled back to that 1920s, coming back from the wars, broken. But the war for us is just the everyday stress of being a child. There's the state performances, there's the stress, like, if I don't pass these keystones, I'm not going to graduate.
Yeah, that's what Gen Z is facing more than anything.
Yeah, it's that, and like, you have to succeed on every single test and get 100, or else you're not good enough. And so you have to keep pushing. And if you don't get 100, like, man, you're wasted. So, like, I don't know. It was an interesting conversation this morning, because I just kept thinking about, our podcast. I'm like, maybe this is the next thing we need to worry about is mental health. I think that's our next big problem.
Oh, yeah.
So, because, we look at all these mental health facilities that are overrun as it is, and we can't get kids in who need the help. So, but alas, that is just the problem, right? But we know that lobotomies and ECT don't always work. So I prefer having conversations. That's my thing. Like, let's just talk it out.
Wow.
Let's not give medicine like Thorazine and hydrotherapy.
Yeah, let's not just jump to that. Let's start with the easy fixes, and then maybe just move in from that.
That's where I want to end this evening. I know we have one last quote that you're going to read, because we both love Shutter Island, the book and the movie. So we're going to end with that. But I just want to say, if you're out there and you need help, don't be afraid to reach out to somebody. There is always somebody who cares.
Absolutely.
Okay? If you need to, just email us.
Even if it's us. Yeah, exactly.
Email us. So please reach out to somebody. Send us a message, gamesoboard@gmail.com. I'm almost a doctor. I might be able to help you. I'll just keep saying that. I'm almost a doctor.
At the very least, we can point you in the direction of someone who could.
That's right. And if you just need to laugh, we'll tell you some bad dad jokes. PJ's on that for you. Don't worry.
That's right.
We'll raise your spirits. You can listen to me die on the inside as he tells you jokes. But in any case,
you know it.
Have a wonderful week. And as always, think spooky thoughts.
Believe it or not, Marshall, I believe in talk therapy. Basic interpersonal skills. I have this radical idea that if you treat a patient with respect and listen to what he's trying to tell you, you might just reach him. Dennis Lehane, Shutter Island.